Welcome to part 5 of our Linkin Park Discography tour. This week we're diving into their album A Thousand Suns, which is a drastic change of direction for the band. It is more experimental than their past records, we get less techno, yet it's more electronic than their previous records in the sense that it gives the feeling of a constant presence of a machine. Building up to this record was more straightforward for the band than they had dealt with in the past, because this time there was a lot less struggle between them and their record label. They had a total of 2 years that they spent where they recorded the album, starting in 2008, just after the release of Minutes to Midnight. And then under the production of Rick Rubin and Mike Shinoda, they were able to release the album in September of 2010. Now, crossing over into new territory for the band, this is their first concept album and departure from their normal sound. There are elements of familiarity, but if you just heard the instrumentals, you wouldn't be able to tell that it was Linkin Park without the vocals. The excellent balance of Mike and Chester's vocals are the ingredient that makes it feel Linkin Park, even though the music is different. Now, Mike Shinoda claimed that the album is not a concept album because it has no narrative. However, it's important to remember that this record runs along a continuous theme, a continuous concept, if you will, of war and pain. So due to this, personally, I consider the record a concept album. Now, the title of the album, it is a reference to the Bhagavad Gita, which is a 700-verse Hindu scripture that at one point was referenced by Oppenheimer about the atomic bomb, as bright as 1,000 suns, which this is referenced in one of the songs that we will talk about. A little side note about the 2 years that it took to record. During this time, Chester was working with his side project called Dead by Sunrise, and in 2009, they released their album Out of Ashes, which is an excellent rock album. If you haven't heard it, yet, you should definitely go check that out. Now, A Thousand Suns peaked at number 1 on the Billboard 200, and as of 2017, the RIAA has certified the record as platinum, which is awesome. Now, this record is very, very emotional. It touches a lot of fears and people's despair. I imagine that this project probably felt very personal to Mike Shinoda due to his Japanese heritage in regards to the album's themes surrounding nuclear holocaust. I feel that this record should go down in history alongside other anti-war albums and remembered for its attempt to stick it to the man, because it is clear from the lyrics and the concept that the band suffers from stick-it-to-demoniosis, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. One variance on this album from previous records are multiple short tracks. They serve the purpose of being intros and interludes to the full-length songs and help set the feel for the album. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Starting off the record, we have The Requiem, which is a rather ominous sounding track with haunting piano and a droning background. It really builds the anticipation with the unnerving vocals requesting for God to save us for humanity's atrocities. This track has the first reference to the album's name, A Thousand Suns, in the song. The Requiem blends perfectly into track number 2. It is a musical continuation with audio of Oppenheimer speaking about how people felt during the time of the atomic bomb. Now that the theme is set, the third track is the song called Burning in the Skies, which dives heavily into the theme of consequences. When tackling important subjects such as nuclear war and the decision of society to either support or start a witch hunt for different groups of people, ultimately the moral decision will have innocence caught in the crossfire. Consequences can be painful and leave permanent scar on society. Burning in the Skies, although somber, does get rather upbeat in the chorus, with piano in the background overshadowed by the drums, guitars, and Joe Hahn's samples. The music video ends with an explosion, which is appropriate because the song then moved to the track Empty Spaces, which has crickets and the sounds of war. This is an interlude track, rolling us into the song When They Come For Us. Now, this song has a jungle-sounding beat with some grinding guitars laid over top, which is really a fun sound. This track brings Mike Shinoda in fine rapping form. The lyrics to me feel like they have a double meaning. On the surface, he's talking about his musical ability and people trying to copy his sound and how he won't follow other people's way of doing music. But there's also a slight undertone for a meaning of a career soldier singing about the glories of war. Go check out the song. Let me know your thoughts on that idea and if you agree or disagree and why. Then just after halfway, the music changes. It changes ever so slightly to sound similar to music from the Tron Legacy movie, I think, personally, I feel. Now, Chester sings a verse that I feel gives credence to my theory of a double meaning to the song, because he's singing about being gone when they come for him. The end of the song is in Spanish, and when translated, basically means pay attention and listen up, followed by some melismatic singing as war sounds in the background. Then it hard breaks into the next song, Robot Boy. It opens with piano, which they have been using heavily in this record in comparison to previous albums. Chester in this song is singing about someone who has given up on their feelings and their fight for a better life. The protagonist of the song has become cynical, but Chester urges them to hold on. The next song, Jornada del Muerto, has a lot more to it underneath than you would think at initial glance. It translates to Dead Man's Journey and is also a reference to a geographical location that has an almost waterless 90-mile span. But it's curious because if you use Google Translate and use the Japanese to English option instead of the Spanish to English, it actually will translate it into English, saying that in Japanese it actually means a young man, which fits with the Spanish translation as well, Dead Man's Journey. So if you bring both of those back to the theme of nuclear war, you get Young Dead Man's Journey, which is quite terrifying of a theme. The song itself is in Japanese. The meaning of the line that's repeated 4 times over the track means lift me up and let me go, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Now, from there we go into Waiting for the End. This song is about letting go or a person's inability to let go. And a quote from Chester really sums up the song quite nicely. He said, "The song is about moving forward and letting go of the past and moving on with your life. But all of us can't do that. We can't just walk away from everything that we feel strongly about. So, waiting for the end is that confusion between the desire to move on and the inability to do so." End quote. Then when the song hard stops, the song Blackout eases into our ears ever so slowly building up with keyboards until you hear a blast of Chester's vocals, where he's almost rapping actually, not quite, but almost. This song is loaded with rage and frustration, betrayal, backstabbing, gaslighting, and the pain associated with being a victim of these behaviors. The next song, Wretches and Kings, starts with an audio sample of Mario Savio, who was an American activist in the 1960s. The instrumentation is gritty. It's excellent. This song is about the people sticking it to the man and stopping the war machine. When the rich wage war, it's the poor who die. Unfortunately, it's a battle to fight the machine, but every person should stand together, and in the words of Rage Against the Machine, I won't do what you tell me. And that is the sentiment of this song. The next song, Wisdom, Justice, and Love, is background music with audio from Martin Luther King Jr. speaking against the violence of the war in the Vietnam era. Then the song Iridescent is a ballad of hope. Hope in a time of confusion and frustration in modern times. They increase the power of the plea to let go of the pain and desperation by adding a choir-sounding section singing Let It Go over and over and over again, which really adds to the power of the song. Now, moving on to Fallout. Fallout is a very simple song. There's a robotic voice that transforms into Mike's human voice by the end of it. It repeats lyrics from the song Burning in the Skies, acting as a transition to the song The Catalyst. Now, The Catalyst, which was this record's very first single, which was released in August of 2010, is a lyrical callback song. It references the opening track, the Requiem, and sings in English the lyrics from Jornada del Muerto. So in this callback to the beginning and the middle of the album, we have the completion of the struggle. And unfortunately, even though they sang about hope in the song Iridescent, this song is expressing utter despair at the thought of everyday average people being pushed down by the machine and being unable to escape. Musically, it builds up and is very electronic, almost as if they're singing from inside the machine. Now, the final song on this record, The Messenger, I feel that this is one of Linkin Park's most powerful songs. In a sense, it answers the despair expressed in The Catalyst and is encouraging you to remember that when the world is breaking and you're feeling destroyed, remember, you were loved, and that love will keep us kind. Overall, I feel this was an amazing record. And initially, I wasn't sure how I felt about it, but the more I listened to it and the more I noticed the common threads running through and cleverly placed callbacks, it was done almost like a well done musical where you get those thematic callbacks. And this record keeps you locked in the whole time with its dynamic sound. It does have an ominous overtone throughout, but it's balanced out by the hope and energy that you get from the piano pieces when the guitars and the electronics get gritty and the beat of the drum hits. This balance creates a world of desperation laced with hope, a journey not to be taken lightly and should be experienced multiple times to fully appreciate. It touches on the human experience of fear and helps us remember that we're in this together and we are not alone. What are your thoughts on the record? I would really love to hear your perspective. Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps build the channel and the community, and each weekend we go live and we talk about the video and wherever else the conversation may lead us. So keep an eye on the community tab for details for the live and when it's going to be scheduled for, and please feel free to join us next week as we talk about their next album on the Discography tour, Living Things. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you then.